write each fraction as a decimal. We can convert to a decimal by dividing. 78 divided by 120 is the decimal 0.65. When we were looking at two variables, such as weight and bite force, using quantitative data, we were able to look for associations or trends based on the shape that it made on the graph. We said this was a linear association and that it was positive because it was going up as we moved to the right. With qualitative data, we have to look for other ways to determine an association. In a survey, 110 students were asked the following questions. Do you like to attend school sporting events? And do you play an instrument? The results of the summary of the survey are summarized in the table. We're going to revisit this question later, but the way we look for an association using qualitative data is if there's a relationship between liking sports and playing an instrument. If there's some kind of pattern, or if one helps us predict the other variable. So, for example, if you're someone who does not play an instrument, are you more likely or less likely to attend sporting events? Here it says, in the survey, what fraction of people who are vegetarians have allergies? These questions are different because of the way that they're phrased. The first one is looking at people who are vegetarians as the population, and the second one is looking at just people in the whole survey. So the way that we would answer these is going to be different based on the way that the question is phrased. Are we comparing it to just the vegetarians, or are we comparing it to everybody? In a survey, 48 adults were asked the following questions. So that right there tells us the total is 48. Do you have any allergies, and are you a vegetarian? The results of the survey are summarized in the table. Complete the table. So there were 4 people total who said yes, and there were 44 people who said no. 44 plus 4 makes 48. 1 plus 11 is 12, and 3 plus 33 is 36. If I add 12 and 36 together, I also get 48. In the survey, what fraction of people who have allergies are not vegetarian? So our population is people who have allergies, and we're looking at not vegetarians. So here we see the people who have allergies and the ones that are not vegetarians. So that would be 3/4. In the survey, what fraction of people who are vegetarians, that's our population, do not have allergies? So we're looking at people who are vegetarians, and then the box for no allergies. So we have people who are vegetarians, and then no allergies is 11/12. In the survey, what fraction of people, so that one's just looking at people, and then the box we're going to look for is non-vegetarians and non-allergies. So the total people was 48, And the no vegetarian, no allergies is 33. In the survey, what fraction of people who are not vegetarians do not have allergies? So people who are not vegetarians is our population, and then have no allergies is going to be our piece. In a survey, what fraction of people who do not have allergies are not vegetarian? Try and answer these two using the table, and then come back and check your answer. G says find the row relative frequencies. Write each relative frequency as a fraction and a decimal. Round to the nearest hundredth if needed. A row relative frequency is going to be compared to the row totals. These were our frequencies. To calculate our relative frequencies, we're going to divide by the row totals, which was 12 in the top row and 36 in the bottom row. And then we also need to convert those fractions to decimals, rounded to the hundredths place. That means we're going to keep 2 decimal spots. 1/12 is 0.083 repeating, but the 3 tells us to leave it. 11/12 is 0.916, but the 6 makes the 1 round to 2. 3 divided by 36 is 0.083 repeating, but the 3 tells it to stay as an 8. And 33 out of 36 is 0.916, and the 6 rounds the 1 up to a 2. H says, find the column relative frequencies. Write each relative frequency as a fraction and a decimal. Round to the nearest hundredth if needed. This time we are dividing by column totals, which in this one is 4. And in the second column is 44. 1/4 is 0.25. 3/4 is 0.75. 11/44 is 0.25. And 33/44 is 0.75. For people in this survey, is there evidence of an association between whether someone is a vegetarian and whether they have allergies? Explain. There is not an association. The relative frequency was the same regardless of whether they had allergies or not. And knowing if they were a vegetarian does not help me predict if they will have allergies or not. In a survey, 110 students were asked the following questions. Do you like to attend school sporting events? And do you play an instrument? The results of the survey are summarized in the table. A. Complete the table. 1 plus 9 gives us a total of 10. 90 plus 10 gives us a total of 100. 1 plus 90 is a total of 91 for the column. 9 plus 10 is a total of 19 for this column. If I add these two together, I get 110. If I add these two together, I also get 110. B says, in the survey, what fraction of students play an instrument? This is of all students. So there are 110 students, and there are 10 that play an instrument. C says, in the survey, what fraction of students who play instruments, so how many people play instruments? That was 10. What fraction of students who play instruments like to attend school sporting events? That is 1 out of 10. D. In the survey, what fraction of students like to attend school sporting events? There are 110 students, and 91 of them said they like to attend sporting events. E. In the survey, what fraction of students who like to attend school sporting events? There were 91 who like to attend school sporting events. What fraction of those play an instrument? That is, one of those students plays an instrument. For F, we have a table, and we are going to find the row relative frequencies, writing them as fractions and decimals to the hundredths place if needed. So we're dividing by the row totals. And changing them into decimals. G says, for students in this survey, is there evidence of an association between liking to attend school sporting events and playing an instrument? Explain. Well, yes. In this survey, the students who play instruments and students who do not play instruments have different relative frequencies for attending the sporting events or not. Knowing whether a student plays an instrument would help me determine whether they like to go to the sporting event or not. If you told me that they do not like to play an instrument, then my prediction is that they do like to go to sporting events because that frequency is higher than the not attending sporting events. If the row or column relative frequencies are the same, there is not evidence of an association between the variables. Because if they're the same, we can't use any information to help us predict the other variable. If the column or row or column relative frequencies are different, there is evidence of an association between the variables because we can predict based on one variable what the other might be. Just like we were able to display quantitative data using a scatter plot, we can display qualitative data using what's called a segmented bar graph. So here we see that there is just under 0.1 that have allergies, regardless of whether or not you're a vegetarian. Those quantities are the same. Then the no allergy section is the same, regardless of whether you're a vegetarian or not. It says consider the row relative frequency for the survey in problem 2. Complete the segmented bar graph by shading the bars to show the relative frequencies. For people who played an instrument, we had 0.1 who liked to attend sporting events. But for not playing an instrument, 0.9 liked to attend sporting events. And then the rest did not. Then part B says, how does the segmented bar graph show that there is evidence of an association between these variables? Well, the heights of the segments in the bar are different. So the relative frequency of students who like to attend school sporting events is different depending on whether you play an instrument or not. Record the survey results from the previous lesson. Remember, if you did this as a class, your data may be different than the data we have in our table. Yours should match the results you had from class for lesson 18. Find the column relative frequencies. So we're going to divide by the column totals. And then change them to decimals. We're rounding to the hundredths place. Remember, that's 2 decimal spots. The 6 makes the 6 round up to a 7. The 3 makes the 3 stay. The 5 makes the 5 round up to a 6. Since the 4 is below 5, it stays as a 4. Create a segmented bar graph for this data. For pencils with apples, we have 0.83. Then for the bananas, we had 0.17. Each of these is 0.1, so 0.17 is almost 0.2 worth. For apples with pens, we had 0.56, which is almost a 0.6. And then 0.44 for the bananas, so just under half. Part B, is there evidence of an association between preferred writing utensil and preferred fruit for students in your class? Explain. There is evidence for an association. The column frequencies are not the same. The heights of the segments are different, which means that the students who prefer bananas, for example, are more likely to use pens because there's more bananas in the pen bar. Or if we know that they like pencils, we would say they probably also like apples because apples takes up the majority of the pencils bar. That is the end of lesson 19. Check back for lesson 20 in the module 6 playlist.